Good evening once again, and welcome to Tinker Tailor Solder Fry, the Let's Try program, here on the mighty Loading Ready Run Video Entertainment Network. My name is Ian, and I will continue to be your navigator through today's project, as through many others that we do, but not all of them. We had something weird happen last week. But we're continuing on with a project from previous weeks, which is, this time, the retrofit of a button box into a hacked... There's been a lot of stuff going on here. We've taken a force feedback steering wheel for video games, the Thrustmaster TMX, and over time we've done a lot of things to it. We've removed the original wheel, which had a lot of buttons on it that we'd use to make selections in your video game. A buttons, B buttons, flappy paddles, and whatnot. And we've replaced it with a bigger wheel because it makes it easier for the steering and whatnot, and then it feels nice. It's just a better all-around physical experience, but it had no buttons in it. So I had to create a side piece for the racing rig, shall we say. And this is what we came up with. It seemed like a good idea at the time until we met this friend. And I use the term friend extremely loosely here because much like the looseness with which I describe our friendship with this thing, it has a very loose idea of what it means to be a joystick that is not constantly wobbling around on its axes. So unfortunately this has got to go, and we've got to replace it with something, but what? Well, last time we decided we'd replace it with this, which is just an Arduino Nano that we've given some little code to that will take button presses, like these ones, and translate them into the signals down the line that are read by the wheel itself. So we're basically putting the buttons back on the wheel that we took off in the first place, but now we get to keep the big fancy wheel. We were talking with Paul, actually, before the show, who's running the tech for us today, and was wondering if it was possible to have everything running through the USB controller on the wheel itself. What's that?
Yeah, because during the last Le Mans, it currently represents at least like the last Le Mans. It was like 3 different controller devices is how it presented itself to the computer anyway.
Yeah, and sometimes, unfortunately, there are racing games that don't recognize more than one USB controller.
Right.
We're not going to have everything coming through the one, though it is somewhat possible with actually, yes,
Wait.
It is possible. Great.
Was it? Wait. So you've got the wheel, obviously, and then the buttons, and then you've got the gear shift, and then you've got the pedals.
Mm-hmm.
Is the gear were those all separate? Like, was it 4 different devices before, or is
it would have been 4 different devices? Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And well, it is possible to get everything running through one system. I mean, if you look at the back of the our friend here, the actual wheel itself, you've got the this little DIN connector here, and that is what you use to usually hook up a gear shifter. And then this one here, and you'll notice this is from a previous Tinker Tailor where we hacked some pedals. This is an RJ11 connector with the little key pushed all the way to the side. That's a
just to be assholes.
Yeah,
eh?
that's a proprietary Thrustmaster connector.
Let's just make it dumb.
Yep. So one of the first hacks we did is we actually replaced the initial pedals that this came with a set that I found at Value Village that were an upgrade, but they were Logitech. So I yanked the cord out of the Logitech ones and resoldered it with the Thrustmaster pedals, and Bob's your uncle, that was great. And then Texan decided that we needed better braking and better control, and so that's why we have these ones now.
Yeah, didn't you get those new pedals like halfway through a previous Le Mans?
It was actually the wheel that came halfway through the first Le Mans that we ever did, because we were using the original Xbox wheel for the Xbox 360, and it was not good. Not good for use on a PC. It worked kind of okay on the Xbox, but on the PC it just didn't quite center up properly.
So theoretically, everything could go through the USB. Like there are enough
Yes.
inputs or whatever on that USB controller in the wheel to take everything.
Yeah, theoretically, it is possible, and you may wonder why I haven't done this before. And that's because it's actually not the best system for racing. When you're putting it through the wheel rather than making a direct USB connection, you're actually reducing the resolution at which the information is being sent to the computer, mostly in terms of time, I believe.
So the gear shift and the pedals both have their own USB controllers, and they aren't like the bad one that you've got.
Yeah.
Like those are actually just like
Straight up real USB.
They're USB. They were designed as USB peripherals.
Correct. And I think the pedals do have the proprietary phone plug you can plug in there. But what that does then is it sends its own, it sends just the raw data from the accelerometers to the wheel, and then the wheel has to process those on top of what it's processing already for the wheel itself.
Right. Whereas you can just do. Oh, that's okay. So you'll be cutting down at least because the buttons were really like the fact that you had it all split up wasn't really a problem with this Assetto Corsa. That was the program you were using, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wasn't really a problem except for the fact that the button joystick emulator thing is terrible.
Exactly, and that kind of meant that you had to get in there and use the keyboard for a lot of things too. And so I'd rather be able to call for my pit stops and make slight adjustments to the pit strategy, just.
And you won't need to take your hands off the wheel and everything. Yeah,
that's the important thing, or lean over the wheel to poke at a keyboard and mouse.
Because there's the little circles cutouts on the wheel there are designed for buttons. Eh?
So I mean, it's not exactly a case where I can reach in there with my thumbs and push it, but at least I can reach forward with a finger and knock things around. There was one other piece that I wanted to do for today's episode, but we'll have to save that for another time, which is, you'll note that we go straight from the wheel to the button plate to this adapter for that hooks it up to the lug on the Thrustmaster itself, which means that we don't really have any place to put the Arduino unit itself. Thankfully, I was able to track down an STL file for a 3D printable object to house the Arduino in just a sort of a an inch tall bracket that goes on the top end of this between that and the wheel. We'll need some extended screws for that. Screws are easy to track down, thankfully. What's not easy to track down is a replacement motherboard for your 3D printer when one of the chips decides to get so hot it turns white and then actually lights itself on fire in front of your very eyes. This is not your typical Ian lights things on fire. This is Ian notices that his 3D printer is currently not turning on, opens it up, has a look around, checks some voltages, clicks on the power, and then sees that chip beginning to get very hot and then go poof and let all the magic smoke out. Lurker Spine asks what printer. It's a Wanhao D6. And I think I have the model of it's basically a rebranded Ultimaker 2.
So yeah, some sort of voltage regulator did not do what it was supposed to do, I guess.
Yeah, I think something's failed there, and then that just
that was in no way like you didn't. There was no fancy modifications that you're overclocking your thing or whatever. This is just
this is before I
fault.
even managed to touch it with anything other than a voltmeter going on the on the 24-volt rail just to make sure it was pumping out. And it wasn't. It was pumping out 2 volts. Should have been pumping out 24 or 12 for my bed heater.
So, I mean, is this a case where you replace the motherboard, or is this a case where you just get a new thing?
So, yeah, thankfully, motherboards, replacement motherboards for the Wanhao D6 itself run about $175, and they're really just Arduino Megas, because they use the AM 2560 chip.
But I feel like you're getting up into the price of just a regular, just what actually like a low end 3D printer costs.
You're starting to get a little bit into that area, but there's still a lot good in that printer, including the body, which is solid sheet metal that's solid as a rock. It's got a good heatable bed to it. Like everything else is working. It was working just fine. We made some, heck, if you've been watching Loading Ready Run recently, you've seen some terrain that we've printed with that very printer.
Yeah, it worked great.
And it was actually in the middle of printing out some more terrain that things decided to shut down. But thankfully, the 3D printing world is one of those areas where everything is still extremely hackable. And you can just throw in a replacement motherboard of any other sort of design. And I've settled on the SKR Mini E3, which probably doesn't mean much to anyone out there, but it's a board that's meant as a drop-in replacement for the motherboards on the Creality Ender series.
So despite the fact like the motherboard will work even though the specs on this device are a little bit different?
Exactly. It's the because all you're doing is controlling three axes, some end stops that happen on switches, and then of course you've got a bunch of other plugs for extra stuff like a screen and a dial. I don't use the dial. I use a firmware called Clipper, which runs. It basically streams the STL data or the G code from your computer directly over USB and feeds it directly into the print buffer.
So will this motherboard also be an upgrade? Like, will it run faster or do something better?
That's exactly why it was sort of a blessing in disguise. This is a 32-bit board versus that 8-bit board.
Ooh.
Which means we're going to get a few levels of resolution improvement. But also,
really? Even though the actual extruder and everything isn't changed, it's still actually higher. It still will result in higher quality prints.
It does because the bit depth actively controls how finely you can move the stepper motors.
Oh, interesting. Right.
And importantly, this also means that the stepper motors are going to be controlled in a quieter way. And so with just swapping out this motherboard, we're going to be looking at a large reduction in just noise coming out of the printer.
That's interesting that the components of the printer are sort of better quality than the firmware that they had running on it. It's interesting that was sort of the limiting factor on it.
Yeah, I guess it's just really that microcontroller technology is what's changed more quickly over the past 5 to 6 years than motor technology has.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to find out what it is, but because it's not something that I've done before and it's something I actually just need to get back up and running, I'm not going to do that as a project on Tinker Tailor. Maybe we'll run you through a post-mortem and show you all the stuff, but it's not something I think I want to be poking and prodding it on air when I don't even know what I need yet. But for now, we've got to get some buttons on a wheel. So what we're going to do is we're going to disassemble this, get the buttons in, and then we're going to solder up the connections. We're probably going to do direct connections from each button directly to the Arduino, and then we'll just run a matrix ground from each button to each button around the back. So,
now, if I recall, where we left it last time was having successfully wired up a button and getting it to, and like plugging it over USB and getting the USB to acknowledge that the button was being pushed.
Correct.
Which is sort of the biggest hurdle.
Yeah, that's the technical hurdle. That makes sure that all the software and the logic is working. Now comes the part where we can actually make mistakes that we'll have to find later.
And yeah, and we there was some frustration over the metric versus imperial pin spacings and the little whatever those are called, the little
the DuPont connectors?
the little socket connectors for the pins that weren't working the way they were supposed to.
I have learned some new things in the interregnum about DuPont connectors and JST connectors and the differences thereof. You can't use the same tool for crimping them, which...
Oh, right. That was the issue, is that the crimping was just going inordinately, was just not being like really weirdly sensitive.
Yeah, we kind of had to relearn how to crimp that day.
So you actually had like a tool that was crimping it to the wrong standard. Eh?
No, that tool was the correct tool. I was just using it wrong.
Oh, I see.
But if I wanted to crimp something for this connector, the little white ones, that is a different connector, different whole ball of project wax. So we're just going to start by yanking these spade connectors off the back of these buttons, and then unscrewing some of them.
This is something you put together yourself originally, too. Yeah?
Yes.
Was that in a previous Tinker Tailor, or was that off camera?
You know, I think I might have done this one just off camera, because it was such a quick and easy build. But if I'm wrong, please remind me, chat. Sometimes the projects, especially when they're all on the same device, tend to run together a bit. Yeah, this definitely could have used a cleanup in terms of at least putting the ground wires together.
Right. So you could obviously you can. There's different ways to set this up, but you can run 2 wires to every single button, or you can run 1 wire to each button and then just run the same ground between all of them, and then
Exactly. Or you can pull the very back of a button off, which is something I didn't know was possible. Oh! That one was soldered. Some of these have been soldered. Ian, what are you doing? Okay, well I guess we just take these out first, rather than yanking the backs off.
Is that button broken now?
We're gonna find out. I don't think so. I remain confident that it is not broken in a way that is unbreakable or unfixable.
Who needs desoldering when you can just pull
Yeah, just
harder?
A short, sharp tug. And that's enough to break a bad solder connection. So that tells me more about my quality of my soldering than anything else. That's one of the black. Well, let's find out if that's a broken button, or if we need to do anything special there. And then let's maybe start looking at lengths of cord that we might need.
Yeah, that's true. As Chat said, if you did do this on TTSF, somebody go back and figure out why you soldered the if they're not supposed to be normally soldered. I
think if I had to come up with a reason why I would have soldered it would be, oh my gosh, well I know how these buttons work and they're terrible. If I can come up with a reason why I probably did solder it, it was probably because of the noisiness on the joystick, and I thought that might fix things up.
Oh, I see. So you might have soldered it in like afterwards.
Yeah.
Thinking that was the problem.
So these buttons are possibly one of the easiest things, or one of the simplest constructions I can think of. If we can go to the camera 5 there. So you see there's just a little silver disc there, and that just goes in and out based on a spring. And on the other side here, this part that yanked out, you'll see there are just the 2 terminals there, 2 pieces of metal, which are literally just the 2 pieces of metal that connect on the wire on the back. So we're just pushing that disc of metal into these 2 silver, I guess you call them spades. That's it.
Does it have a tactile, like a click to it or anything?
Oh, absolutely not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that would be nice. But yeah, so how far do I need to get that back in? Oh, wait, it's keyed. Okay, that's why.
Yeah, when do you replace this with like cherry red switches or something?
Next version, I guess?
There's got to be round keycaps, right?
Absolutely, you'd think there would be. If not, I guess we can just print them up ourselves. Actually, you know what? This might not be a problem, because I think we might have too many buttons. So we need 2, 4, 6, 8 left. 2, 4, 6. Nope, we will need this button.
It's the ultimate, DIY electronics. It's like, that's great. We didn't need that button anyway.
Oopsie, we did. Okay, well, I'm gonna find a way to force that back in. Okay, we almost got it in. Come on. Twist and shout. Ah! I'm worried I'm gonna break one of these spades off the end, too. Oh, no, the solder just broke. There we go.
I mean, you want to use like a heat gun or something to get the cables off?
I'm thinking what I might just want to do is just give this a short tap with a mallet. Just a very short one. Where's my toolbox? This is what
mallet is a surprisingly common usage in electronics.
Yeah. You need to apply just a bit of electrical force in the form of physical force. Definitely the right tools for this job. I don't think I need too much here, just a little tap to this side. And that looks like that's in there. It's not in the key. There we go. Got it in position. Now, did I actually fix the button? Let's do a quick continuity test on that. One side to the other side and press. Oh, that's diode. That's why. Hey! We saved it. All right.
Chad has linked to, there are lots of circular buttons that fit on the cherry stems or whatever.
I've been out of the keyboard community for a while now, and things have really popped off in terms of the
popped off.
But I mean, in terms of creativity and just the sheer variety of the ecosystem now. In terms of key switches, key types, keyboards. Like, none of my keyboards have any of those fancy rotary encoders on them.
Keychron has been doing some cool stuff with rotary encoders and things.
I do have one keyboard left on order that has not arrived yet, but they're down to the last 400 before the pre-order's up. But it's a remake of the IBM Model F keyboards, which were the precursors to the Model Ms. And they're the ones with the...
Those are the, like, the famous...
Yes, the bucking spring will last forever.
Right.
Made of metal, and he's gone all the way on it. This is not the keyboard.coms or the Unicomps where it's just a plastic case. No, he's gone to the effort of recasting cast iron or cast aluminum bodies for it.
Wow.
So they're huge and metal.
I feel like there's been like half a dozen like IBM Model M remake that are usually deficient in like some small way. I mean, the problem is when you're targeting a market of people who are extreme enthusiasts.
Yeah.
Hitting that perfectly is going to be a huge hurdle.
Especially when you're dealing with the extreme enthusiast keyboard market. That's also crossing over then with the extreme enthusiast retro mod community.
Right.
Actually, that's something I might do. Is when that keyboard comes in, I did order one accessory with that, which was so the IBM keyboards used to, some of them, come in, attached with a solenoid, so that not only when you type you get the clickety-clack of the keyboard itself, but you also get a solenoid smacking against nothing just to make a little extra noise.
They
for
just
each
had
keypress.
they just had a thing to make more noise.
Yeah. Back in the terminal days.
They're like, you know, the problem with our keyboards that are famously extremely loud. Not loud enough.
If I had to take a guess, I'd say it's because they came from typewriters.
Right.
And so I think maybe they just expected that, oh, these people aren't going to understand if it doesn't make a bigger noise.
We just have like a little hammer that hits a bell every time.
Well, that's just called adding a bell to the end of the solenoid.
I remember there was a building being built, like a big office tower being built beside my apartment many years ago. And they were digging the foundations, and I guess there's like something where they were like driving pylons into the ground. And so they had this big machine that was literally this big infrastructure that lifted a ginormous hunk of like metal up and then dropped it. It was just like bang.
The bang machine.
Yeah. And so I'm like working at home, and I'm looking out the window. I'm like, that is just the machine that goes bang.
Yeah.
Why do you have that? You brought that machine out just to make my life worse.
I don't believe that's actually driving anything into the ground.
Yeah, it's a pile driver. I admit that it is a real machine, but I was just like, why is this thing here?
And it's always better than the actual blasting portion where they give you the what is it, 12 short blasts from an air horn,
Right.
followed by an explosion, followed by 3 long blasts.
Well, there was that happened here where they, like in our office here, they were building a building right beside us.
Right.
And again, they were doing the foundations, and there is a lot of bedrock around here, and I guess they encountered bedrock, and so they sent a message, a letter around that they were going to be blasting and all the things and stuff. And they were doing some blasting, and it was kind of annoying. In fact, it's possible that you heard it on stream a couple of years ago. But then, after they had like done most of the blasting, like a week or two later, there was this like big explode thing, and things actually like shook. Like there's a big explosion, things shook, and then like 5 minutes later, a construction guy like came by and was like, "Sorry about that. That was a little bit bigger than we thought it would be."
Oh boy, that's not what you want to hear from the guy. Whew. Thinking that some of these are going to need to be desoldered. And one of them is this one.
Because clearly the soldering or not of these things was not the problem.
No. They were all, well, looks like most of them are soldered actually. And then it's just a...
But for those looking at the previous TTSF, the soldering might not have happened there. It might have happened later when you were trying to fix it. Yeah.
In fact, we can actually, maybe if we've got some time, plug this back into the computer and show you all what it looks like when it's just sitting there.
With nothing.
Jiggling away. Of course, at that point, I'm sure it will just work hunky-dory and make me look like quite the fool. This shouldn't take too long. He said, waiting for solder to melt. If I were to go, honestly, waiting for solder to melt is kind of like the impatient person's version of waiting for a pot to boil. It's just as you're getting bored, it decides, oh, yep, now it's time. At least the joystick came with the spades pre-wired for me. Didn't have to actually spend any time crimping these. And I might just use the these wires for what we're doing if we've got the length necessary. I think we do. Ow.
Right, because your controller is theoretically going to be mounted right on the middle of the
Exactly.
wheel. So as long as the farthest away one is okay, you should be fine.
I do intend to once we get that printer back up and running, print that that middle piece. Oh, that's no good.
What? Oh, what happened? Oh.
Well, that one might not be a usable device or spade or button anymore. We've removed the spade from the housing itself.
Oops, whoops.
Yep. There we go. Let's see if we can get that in there. Back in. But I guess, yeah, keep the try to keep the heat directly on the solder and not on anything else. And don't pull too tightly. Or
That one also did.
God, yeah.
So is that somehow you're actually desoldering the pin as well as the spade?
Remember, there's no there's nothing other than just those two spades coming through the plastic on this back end.
And those weren't actually they're just kind of wedged in there. They're not actually attached to anything.
Yeah, they're just held in with I guess the force of.
So, I mean, if you just go to stuff them back in, does that work again? I know.
I could probably if we went from the other side, that would work, which would mean getting the button out, which would mean. Oh no. Yep, that's not going to come out for me easily.
Fortunately, you just detached the things to hold on to while you pull it out.
Yep. Ow, 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 ow. Yep, that's going to be a big, I think we may have to just put it in with heat again.
Like epoxy it in or something?
Well, maybe if I come in from the other side. Wow. I can't pop it out from this side with the button.
It's especially annoying because these aren't even like good buttons that you like want to.
No, exactly. This is, I think,
like to spend a bunch of effort on buttons that are only like,
I mean, I wouldn't say no to ordering myself another set of buttons, but.
You don't have any spares though.
Nope, did not come with any spares. Let's see, can I shove that in there with the pliers? Nope. The plastic is cooled. So unless I wanted to try and remelt that back in, which, I mean, at this point, why the heck not?
It's a good TTSF motto. At this point, why the hell not?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I say. When something's broken, you can't break it any more than it already is, right? So why not give it a try fixing it?
Well, you think that, but it turns out there are multiple levels of brokenness.
Yes. Be sure that you are at the stage of cannot break anymore before you accept Ian's advice. Okay, let's see, because I just need to push that back in. Whoop. Also trying to avoid getting any extra or any plastic on the soldering iron. Okay, let's see if we can just pull that back a bit. Okay. Place your bets, folks. Have I fixed this button, or is it gone for good? I mean, that's... I think we may have hosed this button completely.
Connected for a sec there.
That was me accidentally touching the leads together. Maybe it needs to go in a little bit farther. I have a feeling that pushing it back through the hole with the heat caused the little spades to get coated in plastic.
Mm.
Oof. All right, let's just push that down. Okay. Does it connect at all? Okay, well that's good.
Wait, it should be connecting when it's not activated, though.
Exactly. But if I push it out and then reconnect the two things, nothing, but then we push. Okay, so it's got a hair trigger, but it is a working button.
Ah, nice.
We probably won't be able to use the spades on this one, though. Let's wire that one in last.
If it was a higher quality button, it might have been harder to repair, so that's something anyway.
Good point. Okay, only 3 more. Let's try not to ruin any of these. He said, figuring out exactly how he's going to ruin these. Stay away from the spade. There we go. That one's good.
Mummon's comment in chat remind me of have you played any of the last Call BBS Zachtronics pack?
No, I have not.
It's a very interesting Zachtronics that he does. They've done like all sorts of weird programming type games.
Yeah. Oh, are they the people behind? Anyway, go on.
But there's it's a bunch of sort of mini games with the sort of a presentation like you're accessing a really old computer that never existed. The like Zachtronics Z5. And there are a bunch of games, one of which is literally just building Gunpla.
Huh.
Like it's not even like it's not necessarily like a game as such. You just have like it's like you get a sprue and you can like switch between all your different tools and cut all the little connections and move the things around and they kind of click together in a satisfying way.
But it's kind of like a Gunpla building simulator.
Yeah.
I mean that's no different than. I mean it's obviously different, but it's no different in spirit, I'd say, than something like the PC building simulator. Or well, hell, I put too much solder on these spades.
Yeah, the premise of that particular title is that the person who programmed it this is supposed to be from like the 80s or whatever, and the person who programmed it couldn't import the Gunpla set, so they just made a simulator for themselves.
But cool.
But yeah, there's quite a few. I mean, if you're into the sort of Zachtronic style stuff, kind of there's quite a few. There's a cool sort of Minesweeper-esque game, but with different rule. It's sort of Minesweeper, but there's different rules where you're like building a dungeon rather than looking for mines.
Sweet.
It's quite cool. There's a game called 20th Century Food Court, which is sort of like a programming, conveyor belts and things to follow recipes to make foods. There's a bunch of different sort of little games it's all sort of done in a kind of a retro 8-bit style.
These sound kind of rad.
It's on Xbox Game Pass if you've got
perfect.
that. But
I recently let my membership lapse due to not playing the driving game anymore, but I can easily put that back for those.
Oh yeah, Opus Magnum is one of the big ones that Zachtronics did. That's the one where you're sort of alchemy. You're doing sort of alchemy stuff where you're like building machines to like combine elements together.
All right.
But it's also bittersweet because, as the name suggests, it is actually in fact designed to be the last game by Zachtronics.
And so that's why the articles have been flying around.
Yeah. Although, it's one of the things where it's the last game by Zachtronics, not because they're going out of business, but because they're want to do other stuff. Like they're not interested in. It's sort of I think there's two people are sort of the main ones behind Zachtronics. They sort of like, just don't want to do it anymore.
That is the best reason to not do something. Is to not be beholden to it and then not want to do it. Perfect. Are they staying within software, or do you know, or are they?
I don't know, but.
Yeah, I guess if they're still letting things out there remain on sale, I guess they're not taking their ball and going home.
Yeah.
Come on over there. Whew. All right, last one. Don't beef this completely. Remember, kids, don't beef your electronics.
It's true. That's just good general advice. Beef has no place in electronics unless very specialized applications.
Some sort of electric cow.
Some sort of
Cyborg.
automated hamburger maker, I guess. Beef jerky machine. There was somebody who was doing like laser etched beef jerky at one point.
Yep, as business cards, I recall. There are. I don't know them personally, but I know there are I know of people who own a couple of laser cutter engravers, specifically one for food and one for non-food. Never the twain shall meet.
That's a good idea. It's a good idea.
Generally. All right, let's think about button placement here. We got some colors and some non-colors. I think we're going to have red or green, and red up here is my yes and no's. And then what do we got for colorings? We got 4 blacks, 2 whites, and a blue and green. Well, why don't we do blue and blue cancel for color, and then yellow and yellow cancel. Just as a thought. And
are you thinking about actually like do you know what things these would be mapped to?
So when I had it in the button box, I actually did have a mapping in mind. What did I have here? I think I had it set up, yes, so that there was a cross here of the blacks. So you'd have an inverted T, up, down, left, right. And I think I did green and red for OK cancel. And then I did black and black up there for an L and R analog. And then the 2 colors down there for, just whatever they would end up being. And I think I'm going to do that the same thing here when I eventually end up programming. OK, cancel, whatever these will end up being, and then use these for up and down, and then left and right.
Now, when you plug this in, is the computer going to be like triangle, square, circle, X? Or like, is it, or AB, XY?
It's actually going to be, for this device, buttons, number.
Okay,
And
so it won't think it's like an Xbox controller or something.
Yeah, well, if it's an X, so the TMX has two modes, PC mode and Xbox mode. And if it is in Xbox mode, it will think it's in Xbox, or if it's connected to an Xbox, it will think it is. But on the PC, I think every time I plugged it in, it diverts to PC mode. Actually, I think you still have the graphic that we were talking about that we wouldn't need today. That one actually, I think, has a list of the buttons. Yes, yeah. So I guess this one is they're wired up to be X, Y, A, and B, and then the D-pads. But depending on which ones we connect them to, they can be.
Right. I guess probably on the original Thrustmaster controller, they would have had the A, B, X, Y written on them.
Yeah. And I think that's because, when you're playing with a controller, you want them to be specific buttons because they're in specific places.
Would it be useful to match those colors, like the ABXY colors?
Because of the way that their things are laid out right now, and because I don't have a fourth color, I don't think. Well, maybe it's worth doing that actually when we actually get it wired up. But the nice thing is, basically every racing sim I've played on the PC allows you to remap every button.
Right.
And so it's just when you start up the program, go through and set up your buttons as need be. But making it.
So good job, racing sims that you do that.
But making it correspond with A and B, just to make things easy on myself, might be good. Especially maybe if I want to do especially for the D-pad ones, because I know that those ones are often not remappable.
Oh, and what really sucks is when you're playing a game that isn't so flexible, and you've got your PS3 controller or your 360 controller, and it's for whatever reason being detected, like it either doesn't have the detection or whatever, so it's like push A. It's like, oh crap. Which is X A? Which button? When you have to do like some sort of quick time event. It's like, oh crap! What button?
Heather and I are always on Rhythm Cafe complaining about our memorizations of which button is where.
Right, and of course you're playing a lot of Japanese games which have the like circle back out
X
thing.
and circle.
Yeah.
Made badly. Yeah, the PlayStation one I have no problem with. It's Nintendo controllers now that I'm having a real time reconciling my head.
Right.
What kind of monster puts the X button on the Y axis of your button layout?
I think we know what kind of monster.
Yes.
Mario.
I never went to school.
I mean, Nintendo of America is literally run by Bowser.
It's a very good point, yeah. Yeah, literal monster in charge. I've always liked the PlayStation's abstraction because it means there's no language barrier necessary. I mean, I guess the X and circle as being slightly cultural in terms of their yes/no implications in Japanese is one problem. But having a triangle that points up, be in the up position, is just a stroke of genius.
Yeah, I remember like when I first was using when I first got a PlayStation, and had to do like either a rhythm thing or something that required, fast controller inputs without looking. Triangle was the one I could always remember easily. Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of, well, being a constant gamer from there.
Yeah, you know, if it was Games Workshop, they would have put triangle like on the left or something.
Triangle would have... Yeah, triangle would have been on the left, or they would have represented the D-pad as 4 different triangles going in opposite directions, but the triangle button would be a non-filled-in triangle. And everyone would be happy then. Right? Right. Okay, just finger tightening these bolts in, but we're getting there. In fact, we're just about there. We've only got 4 more to attach before we begin the process of making things hot. One blue.
Is that button mounting plate a custom printed thing too, or is that part of the
Fully custom.
fully custom? Nice.
I mean, not fully custom. Someone else did make it.
Right, but it is a printed piece that fits in.
Right. I had looked in the in-term as well about possibly putting a D-pad in one of these holes, but I couldn't find any D-pads that are sized exactly this diameter.
Mm.
But I think we can make do without. Like I said, by having some of these black buttons stand in for the job.
I don't know. We did a story on Checkpoint this week, which, by the way, should be up on our YouTube channel right now. But
YouTube.com/LRR
VG.
yes.
Yeah. About somebody has been working on this thing. I think they call it Tiny Cade, where it's basically like it's almost like a open source Labo kind of thing. Like they have this system set up where you put a smartphone in as like the screen of you have sort of a cardboard arcade cabinet, little mini arcade cabinet. A smartphone goes in as like the game screen,
Right.
but then the rear-facing camera of the smartphone is used to, and then he uses 2 mirrors, a mirror on the back of the arcade thing and a mirror on the bottom, so that the camera on the smartphone can see the bottom of the control panel, like on the front, and then he has a bunch of different control devices that have positional code things on the bottoms of them, so that they can be detected as moving around or rotating or moving up and down.
That's
and all the different stuff.
super cool.
It's a super swank idea.
Yeah, I'm kind of sad that Nintendo didn't go anywhere else with the Labo, but...
Yeah. Labo really feels like one of those projects that, like, I don't know, they just like took when the Switch first came out, they like got the Joy-Cons and like gave them to a room of people and did like a whatever game jam of like, what weird things can you think of using the sensors in these controllers? And like a bunch of weird Labo stuff came out of that, but then they didn't really like push in on that.
It always surprises me how much is in those Joy-Cons in terms of sensors. I'm honestly surprised that not more has been done with them, especially in the hacking community.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a similar idea where, like, you know, using elastics and different things to hack together stuff.
Super cool. Right, I'm just going to align all these buttons such that they're easy to all along the top, so we can run the ground just along the bottom. Hopefully that'll work out for my purposes. And then do the similar thing with these. One's at the bottom here. Make them easy to connect to each other. So I think for that one we're going to want these ones to be lined up like that. Yeah. Let's make ones next to each other parallel so that the wire runs are as short as possible. It's nice and tidy.
Yeah, I think the only thing other than Labo that uses the IR sensor on Wiimotes or on Switch Joy-Cons is the Ring Fit pulse tracker. You put your thumb on it and it tells you your pulse,
which is kind of handy for a health tracking or for a exercise program.
Yeah, it works very well.
That means you don't have to have another peripheral. Although the Ring Fit peripheral itself is a...
I mean, the Ring Fit peripheral is totally like it's such an odd, like, you know, we're trying to like infer the positioning of your entire body based on how you're holding this one piece and where your thigh, like where how you're holding this thing and where your left thigh is
in relation to.
We're going to use that to figure out your entire body. Which I guess is how like Just Dance and those kind of games work too, where they're like just tracking your hands and then sort of guessing that your rest of the body is doing what it's supposed to do.
I think that's going to be a good wheel for us.
Yeah, that looks very nice.
Yeah, I'm really happy with that. Which is a good thing that we got to this point, because this is a really good time for us to take a short break. So what we're going to do is placemats. We're going to get up, stretch our legs, swap our fluids, and you should do the same. And then we'll be back with more actual soldering here on Tinker Tailor Solder Fry. Don't go all the way away.
Turn your mic on.
Welcome back to Tinker Tailor Solder Fry here on the mighty Loading Ready Run Entertainment Network, where we are in the process of wiring up this. Ooh, that's not a good look. This wheel with these buttons to this wheel controller, so that I can have buttons that I can push with my fingers again and not have to deal with the tyranny of the mystery USB joystick controller's erratic movements. We've got the buttons secured to the device. I have poked many holes in the back by touching the desoldered edges with my fingers, and now we're going to get to work reconnecting things. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to try and reuse as many of these little lengths of wires as we can, because why not?
I guess the little connectors on the other sides aren't any good. You have to cut those off, eh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could probably pull them out with a screwdriver. Let's just see if that works, and if that's in any way useful. Maybe I need to use something a little bit pointier in there, because it's just a little wing of metal that's holding that in there, much like every other crimped piece. There we go. So it's probably not viewable, but that's the crimped JST connector there, and it is teensy-tiny. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can leave the spade connectors on at all, and just see if that's a good enough system for now. And then we can crimp the ends of these and stick them on here.
And with the this diagram we've got shows which
button
goes to which pin out on the board, eh?
Yeah. So I'm wondering how how funky I want to get here. How lazy do I want to be? Because I'm just pushing this little thing over the pin, and that, well, some of the pins, it connects nicely. Yeah, and then that's just enough room to either bump into or not bump into anything.
Except that if you put two of those in beside each other, won't they bridge between them though?
Let's find out, shall we?
Like there's nothing around it to stop it hitting the one beside it.
And we could technically, we could probably shrink wrap these. Shrink tube. Or do the real fun thing of, I mean, we could solder them into the pins because they're not going to be going anywhere. We could also just cover the whole thing in hot glue when we're done. That's a valid electronics process. For now, let's just get these pins out. See if we can do that way.
I feel like there's a non-zero situation where you might want to, reuse this board to like put better buttons in or different buttons or something. Like I just think the hot glue might not be like the best idea.
Yeah, that's true. Reusing the Arduino Nano, you mean? Okay, let's get a second one in there right next to it and see what it looks like when we attempt this. And if there is bridging between the two. Okay, so as long as they're straight, let's make sure that we're in continuity mode. So that's connected to the left one, that's connected to the right one. It does not bridge, so that's interesting. I think for a test fit, this is not a bad idea. And it might be interesting just to try soldering it on, because I can always desolder the entire pin group itself. It's also the nice thing about working with what do you call these? Microcontrollers of this style. They're really inexpensive. Mm-hmm. In fact, they're so inexpensive, I think I've got the, what's my favorite version? The Teensy. And I've got a set of 5 of them I keep just spare, waiting for whenever I'm going to need one to show up in my life again.
It's just like a really small Arduino compatible board?
It's specifically, Teensy is a brand name on that, and they're the ones that are really good at emulating joysticks and keyboards.
Oh. This one isn't a Teensy though?
No, this one is a Arduino Nano.
Is Nano smaller than Teensy?
You know what? I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head what the differences are. Obviously, programming language for how they're programmed, and I think also a little bit of in terms of memory and clock speed.
So theoretically, you rather than doing this, wiring it through the wheel, mm-hmm. you could have replaced that crappy USB controller with one of the Teensies, and that would have worked too.
Yeah. In fact, I did that a while back when I remade a little typing pedal on Tinker Tailor, and also the first Thrustmaster conversion, that was the joystick from the old Macintosh version to a USB version, used a Teensy running MJoy, I believe is the firmware. MJoy.
Teensy MJoy.
All right, let's get pin D2 is where A goes on this thing. So let's go to A2.
I feel like there's a series, there could be like a series of Arduino boards, or like a Pokemon version where it's like Arduino, and then like the evolutions are just like progressively larger Arduino boards.
Yeah. Till you get to the Leonardo, and it's just room sized. All right. Let's just try to wick away some of that solder on that blade so I can get the spade back on it.
Blade and spade.
Board and sword and blade and spade. This is one of the rough parts of reusing any... Oh, you know what? I have desoldering braid. I should just use that. Rather than thinking magical thoughts about how I'm going to get that off, let's just take it off.
We have a thing for that.
It's consumable. That's why I don't think about it that often. Okay. Thankfully, it's the one thing I can't return at Princess Auto. Consumables.
This soldering braid is full of solder.
Well, yeah. It's a really good one.
Soldering braid is just basically stuff with a lot of surface area, right? That'll
Yeah,
just
it's
to attract to suck up the solder.
literally just braided copper. Oh god, but these these spades are just barely holding on to these buttons. God. You apply any heat directly to the back and they just fold like Superman on laundry day. Hey, I finally got to use that one. Thanks, The Simpsons from 1995. Oh, it probably also helps if the blade itself is not full of solder right down the middle.
Does the fancy Kryptonian fabric of his suit need to be laundered? That's the question.
Well, I mean, that begs then the question of what is Superman's perspiration like? I would assume that. Well, you see, okay. So normally I'd say that textiles woven from fibers grown in the under the red sun of Krypton would under the Earth sun grant those fibers with enhanced powers.
Right. I mean, which is why, when you shoot him with bullets, his clothes don't get all ripped
Right.
up.
Except that Superman's suit was not made by the people of Krypton, but in fact by Ma Kent. That's right. I almost said Mae West.
Wasn't it made by Ma Kent from blankets from his rocket?
You're right.
So
Okay.
clearly it can be cut and sewn, though.
Unless she did this at night.
Superman doesn't lose all his powers at night. It lasts more than, his stores last longer than that, I think.
I've discovered your secret, Skint. You're powerless at night. No, Bruce. The sun is still there when it's night.
Oh, okay. Apparently, the making his suit from the blankets in the rocket was a canonical thing at one point. I know, but apparently the current thing is that it's just a regular outfit, but his invulnerability field extends like a couple millimeters outside his body.
What? I mean, that part, yeah. That makes a lot more. That makes a lot more sense. He said, talking about Superman.
I always thought it would be awesome to have a thing with like when, say, Supergirl arrives on Earth because she arrives after Superman. Some sort of thing where Superman or some other super strong person where there has to be like a process. It's like, okay, you're super strong. Here's, how do you utilize your strength, right? You can't just grab a plane because you'll just smash right through the plane. What's the bet? Like, how do you exert force in a useful way in order to accomplish things? I mean, they just fudge it with Superman. It's like, oh, he his invulnerability field keeps it together or something. But it would be neat to actually see that for real, like, you know, a learning process to be like, okay, how do I actually stop a speeding train? I'm physically strong enough to do it, but if I just stand in the way, then the train just hits a wall. That's not effective.
That doesn't stop the train. That just moves the train in an unpredictable manner.
Yeah, so it's like how do we what's the different how do you apply this massive strength in a useful way? I think that would be a neat process to see a Kryptonian or some sort of superpowered person go through. But we never do. It's always just like fudged.
It's unfortunate in that aspect of children's entertainment. Okay, this one's going to be a tough one. It might not be. Well, you know what? Let's just try. I'm going to try and use some of the leftover solder to solder this blade to the top and not melt everything.
Is it just that plastic is like a particularly low melting point plastic?
I think it's just really terrible plastic is what it is. Just make sure I'm still not ruining the button.
Seems to be pretty clear that these are intended to be kind of one and done buttons. Eh?
Yeah. Or just no solder, only spade. Okay, that's it. That'll hold for now.
Right, the World of Cardboard, the famous World of Cardboard speech. It's actually very cool. The Superman thing where I think he's fighting Darkseid or something, and he has this whole speech about, I live in a world of cardboard. I have to, like, everything I do, I have to be careful not to break stuff.
Right.
And then he goes, but you seem like a tough guy. Where it's basically like he's been holding back all this time. It's a very cool bit.
I love Superman as a character. I don't understand the whole issue about making him irrelevant in today. It's like he's just a good guy.
Yeah.
I think of all the times, that's kind of what we need right now.
But yeah, I always get sort of interested in the implications of powers and things, though, that they don't, flesh out in interesting ways. But, well, such is the way. It's like how, if you have two Kryptonians who are punching each other or fighting, like what would Kryptonian fighting look like when you can fly?
Mm-hmm.
So, you're massively strong, but you don't weigh that much. But you don't weigh that much relative to your strength. But you can fly. So like your stance or your grounding doesn't matter. How they would fight would be like completely different than like you wouldn't be doing like kung fu or whatever.
Because where does his motive force come from when he's flying?
Right. But they never do anything. Or it's like, whenever, I love you always see these things where they're like, they pick up like a lamppost and whack the guy with it. And it's like, isn't that less, like an iron lamppost is less strong than your fist, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's impressive to us because we have this idea that like, oh, it's a big lamppost, that's tough. But it's like, no, your fist is stronger than that.
Much. And the more I learn about public infrastructure, those lampposts are not strong to begin with. They're meant to crumple when someone gets hit by one.
Right.
Because people keep driving cars into them, so we have to keep people safe from themselves. Oh, that was right. A and B are their own, and B is on D4, and that's what I got mixed up. D4. Click in. Okay, good. Next up is gonna be one of the X's or Y's. Let's go blue. I'm gonna call blue X. X is D0. D0 is not on this board. So we'll not have that be D0. Maybe we'll have that something else.
Is this a different board than the one shown in the diagram?
It's not, but they don't mark where D0 is on here, or on the image from what I can see. Or do they? D2, D1, and D. So unless, yeah.
It's annoying that they only connect they only have the lines connecting for a couple of them rather than all of them. It seems unnecessarily confusing.
Maybe we'll just have to choose a different button for in the meantime. Like maybe I can go start for this. Or menu. Actually, that's not a bad idea to menu one of these. All right, well, let's say that, yeah, those middle ones are going to be start and menu. So that's D6 and D7. Nope. And right next door on D7.
Do you need to write these down somewhere?
No, because they're not really going to, they're not going to matter for very long.
Oh.
Because everything's going to get remapped the minute I sit down in front of a game.
Oh, right.
Just want to make sure that these pins don't wander around too much. Okay, and finally, these last two. So menu and that. Let's make this one Y.
You're just doing the top row right now, eh?
Yeah, and I can't make it Y because that's a different one. So let's go with D6.
Why? Because we like you.
M-O-U-S-C. Wait a minute. Let's go A4 and D8. D9 on the list at all? Yes, it is. That's one of the D-pads. So we'll need that one. Okay, that's D8. And then this one is going to be... Yeah, the only ones I need to worry about are the D-pads.
Mm. Does the actual motion of the wheel come through as like analog stick input?
Yes, it does. Yeah. Well, it comes through as wheel input, thanks to the driver, because it's not a standard, what do you call it? HID interface device.
Right, because I guess because it's more complicated because it's got to send all the force feedback info back to the so it's more complicated than just so it knows that it's a wheel, not just a controller.
Yeah, but games do only care about axes, and you'll often see them listed in the input says. This is this device x-axis. This device, when you plug in the wheels, you'll get x, y, and z axis for the 3 different pedals. I lost my train of thought. A4 was where we were plugging this into. One of the analog pins. So many inputs and outputs. All right, that's all of the buttons on top. Now we just need to worry about the D-pads. So my left D-pad I was going to make up and down because that's the correct thing to do. So this one's going to be up, and D-pad up is A1. So let's find A1 and plug ourselves into A1.
Fortunately, you have to end up with left, right, above and below each other. Just slightly awkward, but
Well, the nice thing is they're on an angle.
oh, okay, right. So,
So
it
I
sort
can-
of works either
Yeah,
way.
so up, down, I can say, well, that's easily up, down, and left, right. Well, this one on the left
Yeah, that makes sense.
will be left and, yeah, so left and right and up and down.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, down.
You just do it clockwise around the buttons.
Yeah, that'll work.
Up, left, down, right.
How can I make this Vi based?
It's just like how CSS properties are defined. Clockwise, starting with up.
I mean, it makes sense once you remember it.
I mean, it makes sense, and it's nice in that they are consistent. But then every once in a while, something will do it. We'll have to interact with that and do it differently, which is super annoying.
Never nice. Right, we got two more, and that is left and right. So I'm going from this is going to be left, which will then go into A2. That's going to be that one there. Whoops. I mean, there's no whoops at this stage. It's just me plugging in naked jumpers, but don't want to move them around too much. And that means that A3, I'm guessing, is... No, A0 is right.
Just be careful when you're messing with naked jumpers.
You've got to talk them down, but then you've got to cover them up.
Mm.
Okay, so that is going to be our button connections. Now we just need to get in there and solder in some ground support. How do I want to do this? I think if I could just solder these together rather than a tiny wire, and then that'll get me down to there. Oh, that's just a little bit too far.
Oh.
Oh well.
And then you're putting it onto the ground on the Arduino?
Yep, that'll be the idea. Well, yeah, let's use some of our other wire then maybe, so we can make just a full loop. Let's break out the black. So we start here, and actually if we start here and then run it up from there. So maybe if I did it this way. Sneaking around there. Let's just snake it around there so we've got lots of slack. And then around here. Okay.
And the board will ostensibly be in the sort of upper middle like on top of the center
Yeah.
piece, right?
Once I get that that other piece printed that I'm looking forward to doing, it's just going to sit right here before that that plug part.
Right.
Basically, just underneath this bit. So, let's see if I can do what we were talking about earlier, which is not strip everything and just make some holes as we go along. And hope that'll work out for us. So let's just tin this this first piece here. How are we doing for time? Good for time.
I believe making holes as we go along is known as the James Turner method.
Appropriate, yes. The clock we mined was the friends we put in the holes along the way. Perhaps it needs a bit more solder. Maybe it does. It feels like the plastic is melting far before the solder does, which is unpleasant. So that's a good cold joint right there. Okay, so first thing we're going to try is it's right on the back side here. Let's see if I can flip that around. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and make a little hole here and solder that up. So how are we going to do that? Let's...
Just melt it?
Unfortunately, well, this is silicone rubber. Let's see what it does. It's good to 200 apparently. It's it appears to be just fine with 600 degrees. Showing no signs of wanting to deal.
Good to know, I guess.
Yeah, good stuff. So it's going to nibble at the exterior of the wire until it's big enough that we can just maybe pull it apart a bit. Hey, there we go. Okay. And you know what? Let's just spread it across the wire. Look at that.
Nice.
And we can really just get in there.
That means the wire is still quite protected too, which is nice.
And fully intact. Okay. Good enough. Let's snake it along. Make sure we can get it. Give it the space it needs. Okay. Looking at about there.
So you're going to go under as opposed to over, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you have to do both.
Well, I'm kind of actually planning to just go all the way around underneath everything.
Oh, okay.
And then hopefully, well, not hopefully, then later on I'll dollop it down with some drips of hot glue just to keep things secured. Okay. Come on. Is that enough? Yes, it was.
And then the last one on the upper area will then connect up to the ground on the board. Eh?
Exactly. Boy, I've had some bad ideas. And you know what? I've had some bad ideas in the stream, and this isn't one of them. Because I believe this was yours, Paul. This is, in fact, a very good idea that you had.
I feel like maybe we should wait until it actually like is finished and works before we get too excited.
I mean, that sounds like some other show might have a theory about that. Okay, that's a really close shave there, so let's give it a bit of extra wiggle room. These nippers are terrible, so...
Is there? I guess there's probably like a center of the wire stripper somehow. I'm sure that exists as a thing.
Probably. I would like to have one of those.
We actually had a weird Ethernet cable here in the office. I don't know if maybe we still have it. It was handy because it was really long, but right in the middle, there was like a 1-inch perfect cut of the sheath.
Huh.
Taken out about 2/3 of the way along. There's just this chunk taken out of the sheath.
Okay.
Which is very bad.
Yes.
For a thing. So it was like a gigabit Ethernet cable, but it only kind of ran at like 100 base T speeds because it had this big chunk taken out of its shielding for no reason.
Big missing hunk.
But it was really long, so sometimes we had to use it. But it was just like this perfect. Like I was like, why would somebody have done this thing? Maybe I don't know. Maybe it like burned the something like burned the sheath there, and they cut it out for some reason, or I don't know.
I was like, did you run into a penetration testing tool? Someone trying to hack our Gibson? Ooh, I hope I provided enough slack here.
I think you measured it the other way, but like I don't know if you measured it going around across the bottom.
I think we're gonna be. I mean, if it doesn't, I can just add another cord too.
Right.
It's not a failure. It's just a oversight. Also, got to play the fun game of is this blood or is this some part of the process? And this is actually, this is not blood. That's just flaked paint. But for a second, I wasn't sure on my own body.
The greatest game show. Is this my blood?
All right, well, you've made it through the touch test, the look test. You've decided not to go with the taste test. That's right, Bob. As a vampire, I'm not allowed to eat my own blood. I don't know if that's true or not. Perhaps there are other people on staff that we can check with regards to vampire self-cannibalism.
I feel like it depends on the vampire and the particular circumstances.
The various circumstances of your blood. One chooses not to recognize the mistakes of their blood. If anyone wants to pick up and adapt my new novella featuring the characters and events of Mobile Suit Gundam as portrayed by vampires, don't.
I mean, there have been so many iterations of Mobile Suit Gundam. I'm kind of surprised vampires haven't shown up in one.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, it'd be like space vampires, but still.
They have to drink space blood. I mean, okay, new type blood. There we go. Paul, our adaptation writes itself.
If only it could be stopped.
Yeah. Maybe we should have thought about that before we started writing it and letting it write itself. I mean, as a person who is ostensibly in the creative space in both my careers, I'm very interested to see what happens over the course of the next few years with regards to AI and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. AI has been doing all sorts of interesting. I've seen a couple of things of like. I saw an interesting article or a sort of a write-up of somebody like it was experimenting with getting doing like an AI generated logo for their company, and going through all the different sort of iterations of. I think it was like I think it was called like Octobase or something. It was like a database admin program, right? And so they were like cute octopus juggling data. and it sort of comes up with some stuff, and then you have to like tweak the stings, and then you have to, you had to go through quite a few iterations before it came up with something that he was interested in. But I mean, it's cool that you can actually end up doing stuff like that, though.
Yeah, as a first draft or even just comps and brainstorming, I feel like that's pretty impressive that we can get what we get already. I guess it'll be really interesting to see once they start putting them, I guess, onto like news wire stories. Not long format exposés or pieces, but just for those small press releases that go out.
I mean, I think there's a fair chunk of like Google headlines and stuff that are probably already AI generated in some way.
Be surprised.
Customized.
But just to start seeing more things coming out of, say, the Canadian Press or Reuters that are just straight up AI generated. They're not generated, but what they're talking about will be true, but they won't be written by people. We have, I think, succeeded in measuring things out. And in fact, in less time than I expected, to be honest.
Excellent.
This is actually quite clean, too, to be honest. I'm really impressed with it. As long as everything works the way it was supposed to. But yeah, with this method, I don't even really need to worry too much about making sure that it's a good, clean join. As long as there's enough solder just to keep the loop from coming off the top.
Right, because you're actually splitting the wire with the fin, eh?
Mm-hmm. Like no breaks in the wire itself, but just right through the strands.
I mean, I did those, I was playing around with those, putting the quotes through our quote database through the system and, messing around with that. And yeah, it's amazing the stuff, like there's all sorts of interesting things in terms of like, even if it's not creating things whole cloth, sort of taking existing stuff and, tweaking it and improving it. It does seem like something that it can do quite well.
And then refinement is just what humans have to do afterwards. Okay, so now I guess I got to put an end on this. So let's consider that Mm-hmm. How best to do that? Yeah, you know what? Let's try crimping one end on that and just see if that'll work for us. Because we might have to splice out add a bit more to that cable when it comes down to the end of the end of the road for the project, the button-up procedure. There we go.
It is, of course, AI has the perennial problem of it's only got what you teach it. So you have the idea of sort of figuring out what to have as part of its training data becomes extremely important.
Oh my goodness. So I was communicating with someone specifically about that earlier this week, and they were trying to get a photograph, or they were trying to generate a picture of a woman photographer holding a camera and being approached by a man who was trying to take the camera from her.
Like they were trying to generate it on like the DALI or
yeah,
whatever?
Using the DALI. And it refused, because of the way DALI has been trained, she was just completely unable to get it to put the camera in the woman's hands. Every photographer, according to DALI, is male.
It's just somewhere deep in the recesses, it's like, photographer cannot be women.
And there were some bizarre hoops that they jumped through to get things that looked like it might happen, but
that's so interesting.
It's wrong. And yeah, something we absolutely need to fix if we're going to start relying on these devices to be humanistic in any way. And reliable for a larger group of people. All right, let's see if I can get that in the right place. Nope.
But yeah, it is that thing where it's like never going to come up with, it's like there was a story I remember a while ago about some people who tried to use an AI system for resume evaluation. I'm sure this has happened multiple times, but it's like you can see the problem immediately if you go, to train a system like that. If how to train it in terms of, it's like we want to find the best people for the jobs. And if you work under the assumption that the people currently working at the company are the best people for the, we want more people.
Right.
So you pass in the resumes of all the people who currently work at the company as what it should be looking for. Then obviously what you're going to get back out is it's just going to hire more people like the people who already work at the company.
Yeah, exactly like them.
As opposed to trying to get any kind of more
diversity,
more different, yeah. But then you don't not necessarily be surprised when it evaluates.
Well, this was something that I was talking with Cameron about this week. There was another paper I read on a group that had shown various physical properties to an AI, and one of the examples was a chaotic pendulum, one of those pendulums that has the 2 points of articulation. And they just said, okay, watch these various physical properties and discover how they work. And they did. The AIs came up with models of physics that were based on variables that the experimenters could not suss out. Like they would plug the numbers into into the AI's model, and like, Yeah, this is a perfectly valid method of describing these properties you're seeing physically. I don't know how it's doing that, but it's internally consistent.
I remember there's a great article I read about this was less AI and more evolutionary iteration.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's sort of an early form of that, but they were doing circuit building.
Right.
So, building circuits to do different things, and getting an AI to, or a sort of an evolutionary algorithm to iterate on these circuits to try to make it more efficient. And it got to a point where the best design was it had this circuit, and then it had another little circuit on the board that wasn't connected to the other circuit.
Oh no.
But if you removed that one, it stopped working.
Yeah.
And nobody could figure out why. And it was just like, oh boy, we're in trouble.
No, not one of the not more magic again. God, yeah, that's. I get excited about things like that because, oh wow, what if we actually do stumble upon something that we physically or mentally were incapable of comprehending? But then you get those situations, as you say, where like, well, now we just don't know what it's doing. Should we let it continue doing what it's doing?
I mean, obviously, the situation that comes up a lot for us is, the capitalize algorithm, the algorithm. When we're talking, if you're talking about, YouTube or Twitter or whatever, these or Facebook or any of these systems where you have algorithmic things of deciding what's interesting.
Yeah.
That are really a black box. Like YouTube has control over the inputs and the weights of things, but they can't tell you necessarily why a thing is in a specific spot specifically.
It's not just like it's not a one-to-one equation.
Yeah.
We know what's going to come out of this when we do this. It's more of well, let's tweak it and find out.
Yeah.
And hopefully. Right. Oh. Notice Iris of Ether has more magic taped up to their cubicle, which is choice. I think we're ready to test this out to see if it works because.
So to plug it into the laptop.
Yeah, because I'm looking at these pins here, and they actually don't bridge against each other. Huh. There's one that kind of might be an issue, but the rest of them are staying in pretty straight for the moment.
That's very convenient.
Yeah, I'd be pleased with that. If that's the case, maybe I'll just knock those out and recrimp the ends. But let's test first. Let's see what we're looking at. Yes. So if I recall, we needed to go blue to blue because green is not in connection. So there we go. That was right. All right. And let's plug this thing in. Double plug in, I guess, because I need to. Where is the other side of this? Goes to there, and then.
Because there's a hub in the.
Yes, that's right. So I need to plug the hub in.
I guess you could plug it directly into the computer. But.
I could, but then I'd have to undo a lot of cable management and cut some zip ties that I'm not really ready to do. Okay, so that was plugged in, and that is a working plug. Ooh. There we go.
All right. Well, that's something. It's not twisting the cable when it spins, is it?
Nope, and that's what that's how it's supposed to work. Everything's getting power. Just making sure as I said, the pins are not bridging. That's still not. Well, that's kind of. Wait a minute, where are you supposed to be connected? Right there. Get in there. Get into there. All right, everything looks good. Let's move over here and bring up our joystick, which is currently not being seen. Okay, so I might need to power the hub or make sure that everything's connected in the hub. Yes, you're good, you're good. You are the only thing connected to the hub, which is correct. So maybe you just need a little power. Let's give you that. Okay, and then let's unplug and replug.
I mean, the fact
There
that
we
it's
go.
waking up like that means that it's detecting something.
Windows has now said it is setting up Thrustmaster TMX racing wheel. We have good signs there. Let us see if we are... Actually, wait a second. Haha, overhead. This'll work.
Maybe I can move it over a little bit.
Joystick. There we go. Thruster TMX is there. Let's check the properties. Okay, here's our buttons. Let's see if they light up. Oh! You can see that 4 is flashing. 7, 8, 12, 9, 5. Hat. Hat switch. Hat. Interesting.
It thinks it's going on an angle?
I guess it's a 8-way switch that it wants to be. Okay, well that's interesting. So we've got
left down and upper right.
Mm-hmm.
the 4 cardinal directions.
I get the feeling something might not be
Like, are the upper ones is actually like hitting both at the same time? Is that why?
Oh, that's probably it, yeah. There is some bridging going on right now. And that's to one of these, so that's probably it. So if we unplug that. There we go, and this is the unplugged one. There we go, yeah. It was just a little bit of bridging that was going on.
So it's hitting the 2 directions at once.
Up, down.
Cool.
And we've got left, and this one, when we plug it back in by itself. Let's just make sure that that's...
So if you put just like a little bit of heat shrink around that one or something to
just enough to
protect it.
Keep it. But I bet if we just plug it... Oop. Come on. Okay, and then just hold those other ones to the side. And there we go, left and right.
Beauty.
Success!
Alrighty.
Well, you know what? That doesn't look half bad either. That's, we can definitely clean this up. We can definitely get that all in one place. And then this just sticks in behind there. And we've made a heck of a not a mess. I'm really pleased with that.
Yeah, I guess you got to be careful that like none of the wires will get yanked when the wheel turns or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, thankfully, once it's all in there, everything's going to be moving all at once.
Right.
Hopefully. Right. If not, I have done something extremely wrong. But let's just unplug that, because I think that's going to do it for today's show. We succeeded in what we set out to do, and until we get the printer back up and running so I can extend this and package it all up nicely, which is always the least important part, we've done as much as we can do. So with that, I'm going to say thank you, everyone, for watching Tinker Tailor Solder Fry this week. Remember, if you want to help us out, you can check out patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. That will keep the lights on, that will keep the water flowing. It takes our garbage away. Many of our utilities are covered via the funds you provide at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. And of course, you can watch us live and support us over at twitch.tv/loadingreadyrun as well.
Every week, one lucky patron gets to take away our garbage. That's one of the many incentives for our patrons.
I think if we offered that as a Patreon tier, we would have a non-zero number of subscribers. I don't want us to have that, but I think it would be more popular than we expect. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for watching, and we will see you in a fortnight, never in Fortnite, ever forward, learning out of spite. Good night.